Are you traveling to Europe and wondering if you should tip? Well, you're not alone. Tipping customs in Europe can be very different from what you're used to in other parts of the world, especially if you come from the United States. And believe it or not, this is actually a very controversial topic, as you will probably see in the comments below this video. With many Europeans saying things like, Americans, don't bring your tipping culture here, etc. But the crazy thing is, tipping was actually invented here in Europe. Huh? More on that later. This is some guy named Dave in Portugal, an American that has been traveling abroad for the past 15 years and living in Europe for 3. In this video, we'll explore tipping culture across different European countries and give you some tips on when to tip, how much to give, and if it's even necessary at all. But first, a short history of tipping in America. A simple gesture of gratitude or a practice with deep and complicated roots. The history of tipping in America is as layered as the pancakes on that plate. It all began in the late 19th century when wealthy Americans returned from trips to Europe, bringing with them the custom of tipping. Over there, it was a way to show generosity and class. But in the United States, it wasn't so warmly received. NPR News reported that when tipping began to spread in post-Civil War America, it was tarred as a cancer in the breast of democracy, and most commonly called offensively un-American. Many argued it went against American values of equality, calling it an imported practice tied to classism and servitude. Despite the backlash, tipping took hold, but not without consequences. For many workers, especially Black Americans in the post-Reconstruction South, tipping wasn't a bonus. It was their primary income. Employers used tipping as an excuse to pay little or nothing at all. But by 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act introduced minimum wage. But this wage, far lower than the standard minimum, has barely budged in decades, leaving millions of service workers reliant on the generosity of customers. Fast forward to today, tipping has become a $40 billion industry, embedded in American culture. Yet the debate still continues. Should tipping remain a reward for good service, or is it a system that perpetuates inequality? I just recently had a trip to the United States, and it is baffling when you see the bill when they are suggesting you to tip 15 to 20%, which coming from Europe is hard to swallow. But I know the other side of this because I myself was a bartender and lived on tips, so it's definitely a double-edged sword. Now let's take a look at Europe today. Unlike in the US, where tipping is often expected and considered a major part of a worker's wage, tipping in Europe varies from country to country. In some places, it's included in the bill, while in others, it's optional but definitely appreciated. In many European countries, a service charge is already included in your bill, especially in restaurants, so you may not need to leave an additional tip. In France, service a lot of time is included in the bill, usually around 15%, so there's not a big obligation to tip. However, rounding up the bill or leaving small change is appreciated sometimes. If your bill is 18 euros and 50 cents, leaving 20 euros is a polite gesture. In Italy, a service charge might already be included, but rounding up the bill or leaving 5 to 10% for good service is common in restaurants. For example, a 45 euro meal may have a service charge, but leaving an extra 5 euros shows your appreciation. Now a quick word from the sponsor who made today's video possible. Have you ever landed in a new country, ready for adventure, but spent your first hour hunting down a SIM card or struggling with Wi-Fi? Yeah, me too. Until I found Airlo. Airlo is the world's first eSIM store, and it's literally changed the way I travel. With just a few taps on my phone, I can download a local or regional data plan. No physical SIM card needed. It's quick, affordable, and you're connected before you even step out of the airport. Here's how it works. Download the Airlo app, choose your destination, pick a plan, and install it right on your phone. That's it. No long lines, no overpriced airport options, and no surprises. Plus, Airlo covers over 200 countries, so you're covered wherever you go. Whether you're staying connected for work, sharing travel moments, or navigating new cities, Airlo has your back. There's a link in the description below for you to download the app and get $3 off your Airlo eSIM purchase if you use the code DAVE3. Don't let roaming fees ruin your trip. Check out Airlo today. Now, back to the video. In Germany, tipping is customary but not mandatory. It's typically round up the bill or leave 5 to 10%. For example, if your bill is 25 euros, you could leave 28 or 30 euros. In Spain and Portugal, rounding up the bill or leaving a couple of euros is common, but certainly not expected. It's important to note that in my experience here in Portugal, most locals do not tip unless the service truly was above and beyond. Many here do not want tipping culture to become a thing because individuals coming from more wealthy countries will get better service than the locals, and that's just not fair. In the UK, a service charge is often added to the bill, but it's still polite to leave something if the service was good. If there's no service charge, tipping is more common. For example, on a 50 euro meal, leaving 5 euros is appreciated, as you can see far less than what is expected in the USA. In Scandinavia, tipping is not a common practice and it's not expected in most places. Workers are paid fair wages and service charges are included. If you feel the service was exceptional, leaving a small 5 to 10% is a nice gesture, but it's certainly not required. Similar to Scandinavia, tipping is not a big part of Swiss culture, as service charges are typically included. However, rounding up the bill is always appreciated. No tip necessary, but rounding up is a kind gesture. In most European countries, it's common to tip hotel staff, like the concierge, bellhops, or housekeeping. For taxis or rideshare services, rounding up to the nearest euro is common in most European countries. For a private tour or group tour, leaving a tip of 5 to 10 euros per person for guide is often appreciated and might be expected thanks to the large number of American tourists, especially if the tour was enjoyable. Now, here's what I always tell people. If the service you receive goes above and beyond, feel free to tip more. In places like Italy and Spain, this might be 10 euros or more for a standout experience. In many European countries, the service charge includes most tips, and workers don't rely on tips to make a living. It's seen more as a bonus for excellent service than a necessity. So, should you tip in Europe? The short answer is it depends. It's always polite to leave a little something for exceptional service, but in many places, it's not essential as it is in other parts of the world. Go with your gut feeling and don't try to change the culture that's already there. Do you have any personal experiences with tipping in Europe? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe because I'll be posting videos like this every single week on this channel. And also go add me on Instagram, Dave in Portugal, where I share behind the scenes locations and some of my favorite places that I've visited in Europe. This is some guy named Dave in Portugal, and hopefully we'll see you next time.